Sarah's hand shook as champagne dripped from the tray onto the marble floor. The restaurant manager's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "On your knees. Apologize to Mr. Whitmore, now." The silver-haired businessman smirked from his chair. He'd knocked the tray himself. Everyone saw it, but no one would dare contradict him. "I didn't do anything wrong," Sarah said, her voice steadier than her trembling hands. "I said kneel." Then the room went silent. Not the silence of anticipation, but the silence of fear. Footsteps, measured and deliberate. A man moving through the dining room like a shadow given form. Impeccable burgundy suit jacket over a crisp white shirt, dark tattoos barely visible at his collar, and eyes, dark, penetrating eyes that made grown men look away. Kim Park. The name whispered in boardrooms and back alleys. The Korean boss who never raised his voice because he never needed to. If you want to discover how one moment of dignity changed 2 lives forever, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more powerful stories like this to life. Now, back to the story. The alarm pierced the darkness at 4:45 a.m., the same merciless sound that had dragged Sarah Thompson from sleep every morning for 3 years. She silenced it before the second beep, her body already moving through the motions before her mind fully woke. The studio apartment in Washington Heights was quiet, except for Marcus's steady breathing from the bedroom. The only bedroom, because her 19-year-old brother needed the space for his wheelchair, his physical therapy equipment, his dignity. Sarah dressed in the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face to chase away the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. 26 years old, and she felt 50. In the mirror, her mother's eyes stared back at her, warm brown, determined, tired. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since she'd lost her parents and Marcus had lost the use of his legs. 3 years of carrying the weight of survival on shoulders that sometimes felt too narrow for the load. She made breakfast quietly, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee strong enough to taste like a promise. Marcus rolled into the kitchen at 5:30, already dressed for his remote data entry job, the one that barely covered his share of expenses but gave him purpose. "Morning, sis." His smile was the same one that used to light up basketball courts before the semi-truck ran the red light, before everything changed. "Morning, Mark." She kissed the top of his head, placed his plate in front of him. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that came from being each other's only family. The spreadsheet lived in Sarah's phone, a digital monument to impossible dreams. $85,000 for the experimental nerve regeneration surgery in Germany. Dr. Weber's clinic had a 70% success rate, 70% chance Marcus could walk again. She'd saved $12,000 in 3 years. At this rate, she'd have enough when Marcus was 35. The thought made her chest tight as she helped him with his morning stretches, the physical therapist's routine they couldn't afford to continue professionally. Marcus's muscles had atrophied despite his best efforts. Time was running out, even if neither of them said it aloud. Sarah kissed him goodbye at 5:50 and caught the first subway downtown. Hotel housekeeping from 6 to noon, scrubbing toilets, changing sheets, erasing evidence of lives she'd never live. Then the supermarket cashier shift she'd recently quit for restaurant work that paid slightly better. Her associate's degree in hospitality management hung on the wall of her tiny bathroom, a $15,000 piece of paper that had earned her exactly 32 rejection emails. Overqualified for service positions, underexperienced for management roles. The impossible catch-22 of being educated while black and broke. By 2:45 p.m., Sarah stood in the staff room at Azure, Manhattan's newest temple to excess, pulling her natural curls into a tight professional bun. Her server uniform was crisp, her smile practiced. Derek, the floor manager, caught her before she entered the dining room. "Table 8 tonight." His voice carried a warning. "Bradford Whitmore. He's connected. Politics, money, the works. Whatever he wants, he gets. Don't mess this up, Thompson." Sarah nodded, her stomach nodding. She'd heard the rumors about Whitmore, the complaints from other servers, the wandering hands, the impossible demands. But she needed this job. Needed every dollar, every tip, every chance to climb closer to that impossible number. She pushed through the swinging doors into the pristine dining room, tray balanced perfectly on her shoulder, game face locked in place. The chandeliers cast everything in golden light, making the marble floors gleam like ice. Table 8 sat in the corner, prime real estate, maximum visibility. Bradford Whitmore was already seated, silver hair perfectly styled, smile sharp as a blade. Sarah took a breath and walked forward, carrying the weight of the world on a champagne tray. It happened so fast that Sarah's mind registered the motion before the consequence. Whitmore's hand swept out, casual, deliberate, and caught the edge of her tray. Crystal flutes tumbled in slow motion, champagne arcing through the air like liquid gold before exploding against the marble floor. The crash silenced the entire restaurant. Sarah's hands were still extended where the tray had been, champagne dripping from her fingers. She knew immediately, the angle of his reach, the satisfied smirk playing at his lips. Everyone saw it. The other servers, the diners at neighboring tables, even Derek, who was already crossing the floor with fury in his eyes. "Look what you did." Whitmore's voice carried, designed for an audience. He brushed champagne droplets from his $3,000 suit with theatrical disgust. That was a 2012 Dom Perignon, $400. "Sir, I apologize, but—" Sarah started, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "On your knees, sweetheart." Whitmore leaned back in his chair, smile widening. "I want a proper apology. On your knees." Derek reached them, his face mottled red. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry. Sarah, apologize now." Sarah looked at the floor, the champagne pooling between shards of crystal, the marble that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. She looked at Whitmore's expectant face, at the other diners watching like it was dinner theater. She thought of Marcus, of the surgery fund, of the $400 that would be deducted from her pay plus termination. "I won't kneel for something I didn't do." The words came out quiet but clear. Derek grabbed her arm. "Apologize properly or you're fired and paying for it." I said no. The restaurant's energy shifted before Sarah understood why. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even Whitmore's smile faltered. The maitre d' by the entrance had gone rigid, and a waiter near the bar actually stepped backward. Then Sarah heard them. Footsteps, measured and deliberate, the kind that made people move without being asked. The man who entered moved like water, fluid and inevitable. 6'1", lean but clearly muscular beneath a burgundy suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in a year. Sharp jawline, hair styled with precision, and tattoos, intricate, dark ink, just visible above his collar and at his wrists. But it was his eyes that made Sarah's breath catch. Dark, penetrating, the kind of eyes that calculated vectors and vulnerabilities in the space between heartbeats. 2 bodyguards flanked him, one Korean, tall and stone-faced, one black with a build that suggested military training. The detail registered with Sarah, even through her shock. The man didn't look around. He didn't need to. The entire restaurant had already oriented toward him like flowers tracking the sun. He stopped 2 meters from Sarah. Up close, she could see the subtle details. The perfect knot of his tie, the glint of an expensive watch, the absolute control in every micro-movement. He looked at Whitmore, then at Derek, then at the champagne on the floor. When his eyes finally settled on Sarah, something flickered in their depths. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. Without a word, he reached up and removed his burgundy jacket. The motion was slow, deliberate, intimate, despite the distance and the audience. He folded it once, the silk lining catching the light, and in one fluid movement, stepped forward and placed it over Sarah's shoulders.
The weight of it settled like armor, heavy, warm, smelling of bergamot and something darker. Sarah stood frozen, the jacket still carrying his body heat, her champagne-soaked uniform suddenly hidden beneath expensive silk. The man turned back to Whitmore. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, yet every person in the restaurant heard it. "Say it again." Whitmore blanked. "I'm sorry." "Tell her to kneel." The man's eyes never left Whitmore's face. "I want to hear you." He repeated something in Korean to his bodyguards, then back to English. "Go ahead." "Mr. Park, I didn't realize. This is just a misunderstanding." Whitmore had gone pale, half rising from his chair. Kim Park, Sarah's mind supplied, the name clicking into place. Everyone in New York knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Kim tilted his head fractionally. "I own this restaurant, as of 3 weeks ago. You'd know that if you were actually important." He turned to Derek without waiting for Whitmore's response. "You're done. Security will escort you out." Derek's mouth opened and closed. "Mr. Park, I've been here since—" "Now." The bodyguards moved. Derek stumbled backward, then fled toward the staff room. Kim finally looked at Sarah again, his expression unreadable. "You, my office, 10 minutes." Then he walked away, bodyguards falling into formation behind him, leaving Sarah standing alone in the center of the dining room. The jacket was still draped over her shoulders, heavy with implication. The entire staff stared at her, some with envy, some with fear, all with questions she couldn't begin to answer. Sarah's hands finally started to shake.
Kim Park's office occupied the top floor, accessed by a private elevator that required a keycard. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a conquered territory, the city lights glittering below. The decor was minimalist, clean lines, dark wood, and 3 pieces of Korean artwork that Sarah recognized from her art history elective. Scholarly landscapes, ink on silk, worth more than her apartment building. A woman in her 30s entered silently, carrying a wooden tray. She prepared tea with ceremonial precision, heating the small cups, measuring loose leaves, pouring water at an exact temperature. The ritual was mesmerizing, meditative. She placed a cup before Sarah, bowed slightly to Kim, and disappeared. Kim sat across from her, not behind the massive desk, but in the adjacent chair. Conversation, not interrogation. "You have a degree," he said, his English carrying only the faintest accent. "Hospitality management. Why are you serving tables?" Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm cup, buying time. "Because letters after your name don't matter when you have the wrong face and no connections." Something shifted in his eyes, not pity, but recognition. Perhaps respect. He took a sip of tea before speaking again. "I had you background checked, the moment you refused to kneel." Heat flashed through Sarah's chest. "You had no right." Marcus Thompson, 19, paraplegic from a car accident 3 years ago. Your parents died in the same crash. You're saving for experimental surgery in Germany, $85,000. You've managed $12,000 in 3 years. He recited the facts without cruelty, but without apology either. "I never invest without research, and I'm about to make an investment." Sarah set down her cup before she dropped it. "What are you talking about?" "Operations manager for my restaurant group. $75,000 annual salary. Full benefits, including health insurance that covers Marcus. You'd oversee staff training, supplier relationships, efficiency improvements across 6 locations." The number hit her like a physical blow. 75,000. More than 3 times what she made now. Marcus's insurance alone was worth another 20,000 in medical bills. "Why?" Her voice came out raw. "What do you want from me?" Kim leaned forward slightly. "I want what you showed me tonight. Dignity, integrity, intelligence. I have dozens of employees. Very few have all 3. He paused. "And fewer still have the courage to refuse power when it demands submission." "I know who you are." Sarah met his eyes. "What you are. Then you know I don't make this offer lightly." His expression remained neutral, but something intense burned beneath. "And I protect what's mine."
He placed a business card on the table between them. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, Kim Park, Chairman, Mirage Holdings. Simple, absolute. "Think about it," he said, standing. The conversation was over. "But think quickly. People who refuse Bradford Whitmore tend to find life difficult. I can make that difficulty disappear." Sarah took the card with trembling fingers. The tea sat cooling on the table, the ceremony incomplete. Marcus rolled his wheelchair back from the kitchen table, his face lit with an excitement Sarah hadn't seen in months. 75,000? Sarah, that's the surgery. That's everything. It's also a man who had me investigated without permission. Sarah sat on the couch, still in her uniform, Kim's jacket folded carefully on the chair beside her. The silk seemed to glow in the dim lamplight. Outside, the city hummed with possibility and threat, and Sarah Thompson stood at the edge of a choice that would change everything.
3 weeks later, Sarah stood in her new office at Mirage and wondered if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. The space was larger than her entire apartment. Glass walls overlooking the main dining room, Herman Miller chair, dual monitors, and a view of the Manhattan skyline that made her chest tight. She had a team, people who reported to her, people who expected her to know what she was doing. The imposter syndrome hit like a wave. Min Jun appeared in her doorway, carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who'd seen this before. Korean, early 30s, with the kind of loyalty that bordered on ferocity. "Mr. Park doesn't make mistakes," he said simply. "If he hired you, you earned it." Sarah's first test came that afternoon. A supplier, the same one Azure had used, presented an invoice for seafood delivery. The numbers were inflated, obvious to anyone who'd worked the industry. Sarah pulled up market rates on her computer and negotiated him down 30% in 15 minutes, her voice calm and uncompromising. When she looked up, Kim was standing outside her glass office, watching. He gave a single nod, barely perceptible, and walked away. Sarah exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. The innovations came naturally. She implemented a staff training program that treated servers like professionals, not servants. Formed partnerships with local farms and community organizations. Streamlined kitchen operations to reduce waste by 40%. Within 2 weeks, staff morale had shifted. Within 3, profit margins showed measurable improvement. The real miracle came on a Thursday afternoon. Sarah sat in Dr. Chen's office while Marcus completed his first session with a neurological physical therapy specialist, the kind of care their previous insurance would never have covered. When Dr. Chen showed them the treatment plan, Marcus's hand found Sarah's and squeezed. She saw tears in his eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, they were tears of hope. Kim started appearing at Mirage 3 or 4 times a week. He always asked Sarah to brief him privately, never in her office where staff could see, but in the wine cellar or the closed kitchen after hours. The conversation started with business, but expanded like roots seeking water. Her childhood in the Bronx, his immigration from Seoul at 17, his family's struggles, though Sarah sensed careful editing in his stories. They talked about books, music, the way food could tell stories about belonging. One evening, Sarah brought Marcus to meet Kim. They sat in Mirage's private dining room, and Kim taught them Baduk, the ancient Korean strategy game. Marcus picked it up quickly, his competitive nature surfacing. Kim's rare smile appeared, genuine and unguarded. Later, as Sarah helped Marcus to the car, her brother said quietly, "He looks at you like you're the only person in the room." "He looks at everyone that way," Sarah deflected. "No, he doesn't." The other side of Kim's world revealed itself gradually. 2 Korean men in expensive suits meeting with him in the corner booth, their body language radiating deference that bordered on fear. When Sarah approached with their drinks, the conversation switched seamlessly to Korean. She caught Kim's eyes, a warning or an apology, she couldn't tell. That night, Sarah researched Kim Park. Articles praised his business acumen, restaurants, real estate, venture capital, but deeper searches revealed rumors, whispered connections to organized crime, photos with politicians and celebrities who smiled too carefully in his presence. The State Department had investigated him twice. Both times, charges evaporated. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was curious. It was past midnight when she found Kim alone in Mirage's closed dining room, reviewing blueprints spread across a table. He looked up as she approached. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can't stop thinking." She gestured to the plans. "What's this?" "A community center, in a neighborhood that needs it." He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. "I want to build something that matters. Tell me how." Sarah looked at the blueprints, at this man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, who was asking her, truly asking, how to do good. She pulled out a chair and sat down. "First, you listen to the community, not what you think they need, but what they actually need." Kim's eyes held hers. "I'm listening." And in that moment, Sarah realized she'd already made her choice. She'd made it the night he placed his jacket on her shoulders. Everything since had just been catching up to that truth.
2 months in, and Sarah had transformed Mirage into something remarkable. Profits up 40%, staff turnover at an all-time low, waiting list for reservations stretching 3 weeks. She was reviewing supplier contracts when she heard the crash. The brick came through the front window at 2 p.m., safety glass exploding inward in a glittering cascade. Sarah threw up her arm instinctively, felt the sharp kiss of a shard cutting through her sleeve. The brick landed on the hostess stand, a note tied with wire, "Park's girl." Time fractured, staff screaming, Minjun pulling her back from the window, blood seeping through her white blouse, warm and inevitable. Kim arrived in 4 minutes. Sarah had never seen him move that fast or with that expression. The careful mask he wore like armor had shattered, revealing something raw and dangerous underneath. He crossed the dining room in 5 strides, grabbed her shoulders, his eyes scanning her body for damage. "Show me." Not a request. His hands were already pushing up her sleeve, revealing the cut, shallow but bleeding. He switched to Korean, barking orders that sent his bodyguards spreading through the building like smoke. Minjun was on the phone, closing the restaurant, calling what sounded like reinforcements. Kim's fingers were gentle despite his fury, pressing his pocket square against the wound. "Emergency room, now." "It's not that bad." "Now, Sarah." But Minjun appeared at his shoulder, whispering urgently in Korean. Kim's jaw clenched, something lethal crossing his face. He looked at Sarah, and for a moment she saw the calculation. Duty versus desire, business versus something that looked like terror. He pulled her into a private alcove, away from the chaos. "This is my fault. You're in danger because of me. I chose this job." Sarah's voice was steadier than her hands. "I knew the risks." "You didn't know this risk." His control was fracturing, words coming faster. "You didn't know you'd—" He stopped, jaw working. "Become what?" They were inches apart, his hand still on her arm, blood staining his pocket square. The tension between them was electric, dangerous, months of careful distance combusting in a single moment. Minjun interrupted, urgent Korean pulling Kim's attention. Kim squeezed Sarah's arm once, too tight, almost desperate, then released her. "You're taking 2 weeks off, paid, non-negotiable. I'll have security on you and Marcus." His tone left no room for argument, but his eyes told a different story, something between command and pleading. Sarah opened her mouth to protest. The look he gave her, raw, almost vulnerable, killed the words in her throat. The FBI agents appeared at her apartment that night. Special Agent Torres showed her badge through the door crack. "Miss Thompson, we need to talk about Kim Park." Sarah kept the chain on. "I have nothing to say to you. He's under federal investigation, RICO violations, money laundering, conspiracy. We know you're close to him." Torres's voice carried practiced sympathy.
Help us and we'll protect you. Stay silent, and when this crashes down, you'll go down with him, your brother too." Sarah closed the door in their faces, but fear took root anyway, coiling around her ribs like wire. She stood outside Kim's penthouse at midnight, her finger hovering over the buzzer. When he answered, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Sarah, we need to talk." His penthouse was glass and steel overlooking the city, minimalist except for the Korean art. Sarah paced while he watched, silent. "The FBI came to my apartment. They want me to inform on you." The words tumbled out. "I told them to leave, but Kim, what am I doing here? What are we doing?" "You should go home." His voice was careful, controlled. "This was a mistake. I never should have. Don't." Sarah closed the distance between them. "Don't make decisions for me. You should be afraid of me." He backed her against the floor-to-ceiling window, but his hands were gentle. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." "I am afraid," Sarah said, her voice breaking, "but not of you. I'm afraid of how I feel about you." Kim's control shattered. He kissed her, desperate, hungry, months of restraint exploding in a single moment. His hands framed her face like she was something precious and dangerous. When he tried to pull away, Sarah grabbed his collar and pulled him back. "I can't," he said against her lips. "Not while you're in danger because of me. You don't get to make decisions for me." She kissed him again, harder. "Not about this." This time, he didn't pull away. Sarah woke to pale morning light and Kim's arm around her waist. His penthouse bedroom held minimal furniture, a low bed, a single chair, and mounted on the wall, a traditional Korean blade in a lacquered sheath. Beautiful and lethal. Reality crashed back like cold water. Kim's eyes opened, dark and unguarded. For one moment, they were just two people. Then the world rushed in, the brick, the note, the FBI, the blade on the wall. "No regrets," he said quietly, reading her face. Sarah touched his jaw. "No regrets, but we need to talk about what happens next." "I know." He pulled her closer. "I know." The FBI became a shadow Sarah couldn't shake. Agent Torres appeared outside Mirage during her lunch break. A black sedan idled across from her apartment. They questioned Marcus, polite but pointed questions about Kim's visits, his gifts, his business associates. Marcus called Sarah furious and shaken. Kim's response was immediate. He pulled Sarah deeper into his protection, which meant deeper into his world. A bodyguard named Jin appeared at her apartment each morning, silent and efficient. Her phone was replaced with an encrypted device. And one evening, Kim asked her to accompany him to a meeting. The private room at an upscale Korean restaurant held 6 men, all middle-aged, all watching Sarah with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Kim introduced her simply. "Sarah Thompson, my operations manager and strategic advisor." One man, silver-haired, expensive watch, spoke in Korean. Kim's jaw tightened. He responded in English, his tone glacial. "She belongs wherever I say she belongs. Question me again, and you'll regret it." The room went silent. The meeting concerned a territorial dispute with a rival gang threatening 3 of Kim's properties. The men proposed violence, swift, decisive, traditional. Sarah listened, calculating, then spoke. "What if we don't fight them? What if we make them irrelevant?" She outlined a community partnership program, youth job training, small business loans, neighborhood improvement projects. Give people a reason to choose you over them, not fear. Investment. The men stared. Then the silver-haired one laughed, genuinely surprised. She has vision. Kim's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. But respect from his associates couldn't prepare Sarah for Kim's mother. Mrs. Park arrived from Seoul with designer luggage and disappointment in her eyes. The dinner at Kim's penthouse was excruciating. Traditional Korean courses served with elegant cruelty disguised as politeness. "Your Korean is very limited," Mrs. Park said in careful English, smiling. Kim's wife should speak his language fluently.
I'm learning, Sarah replied evenly. And your family. Kim tells me your parents are deceased. How unfortunate. Family is everything in our culture. Kim's voice cut like a blade. 어머니, 그만하세요. Mother, stop. Mrs. Park switched to rapid Korean, her tone making the disapproval clear. Kim responded sharply, the argument escalating until Sarah stood. Excuse me. She left the table, retreating to the balcony. Kim found her minutes later. I'm sorry, she had no right. She's your mother. Sarah's voice was steady, despite the burning in her chest. She wants what's best for you. I understand that. Maybe she's right. Maybe I won't come between you and your family. Kim turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. You are my family now. The words landed like a promise and a burden.
When Dr. Weber's office confirmed Marcus's surgery date, Sarah stared at the $85,000 invoice with tears in her eyes. Kim found her in her office that evening. I'll transfer the funds tomorrow, he said simply. No. The word came out harder than intended. I need to do this myself. Pride or principle? Both. Sarah looked up at him. I need to know I saved my brother, not you. Kim studied her for a long moment. A loan, market rate interest, 5-year payment plan. It was a compromise that let her keep her dignity. Sarah took it. Berlin was cold in November. Sarah held Marcus's hand in the pre-op room while Kim's security detail waited outside. The surgery took 11 hours. When Dr. Weber emerged, his smile told the story before his words did. Successful. The nerve regeneration should progress over 8 to 12 months. He will walk again. Sarah collapsed into a chair and sobbed. 3 years of terror releasing in a single moment. Marcus would walk. Her brother would walk. But as she sat in the recovery room watching Marcus sleep, Sarah felt the weight of her new reality. Everything good in her life was now tied to Kim Park, her salary, her brother's surgery, her safety, her heart. She'd traded one kind of dependence for another, and she wasn't sure if that was freedom or a more gilded cage. The flight back to New York landed at JFK on a gray December afternoon. Sarah pushed Marcus's wheelchair through customs, exhausted but hopeful. Kim's security was supposed to meet them at baggage claim. 3 men in dark coats intercepted them first. Ms. Thompson, the accent was Chinese, you're coming with us. Don't make a scene or your brother gets hurt. One man's jacket fell open, revealing a gun. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She looked around desperately. Where was Jin? Where was Kim's team? The men moved quickly, professionally. One grabbed her arm, another took control of Marcus's wheelchair. They were through the exit and into a waiting van before Sarah could scream. The last thing she saw was Jin running toward them, too late, his face stricken with the knowledge of his failure. Then the van door slammed shut, and Sarah Thompson disappeared into the winter afternoon. The warehouse smelled of rust and salt water, somewhere near the docks. Sarah had been blindfolded for 48 hours, her hands zip-tied behind a metal chair. She'd lost track of time, measured only by the guards' shift changes and the meals that came irregularly. Takeout containers, cold noodles she ate with her hands still bound. Chen's voice was cultured, almost pleasant. Kim Park values you. Unfortunate for both of you. What do you want? Sarah kept her voice steady through the terror. His territory in Flushing, the commercial real estate, the businesses, the influence. He gives me that. You and your brother go home. Marcus. Sarah's heart seized. Where is he? Safe, for now. Chen's footsteps circled her. Park has 24 hours to decide. You or his empire. But even through her fear, Sarah was analyzing. 3 guards rotating every 8 hours. The warehouse had loading bay doors. She'd heard trucks. Water nearby. Seagulls at dawn. They were feeding her, which meant they expected her alive. Chen needed her as leverage, not a corpse. She memorized everything. Kim mobilized like a general going to war. He called in every favor, activated every alliance. The Italian families in Brooklyn, the Russian network in Brighton Beach, his Korean contacts across 3 cities. He even made a deal with Agent Torres, information on Chen's smuggling operations in exchange for Sarah's location. The FBI traced Chen's burner phone to Red Hook. Kim's team moved at 3 a.m., tactical and silent. Sarah heard the assault before she understood what was happening. Gunfire, sharp cracks echoing through metal, shouting in multiple languages. The guard beside her reached for his weapon. The warehouse door exploded inward. Kim came through like a demon, gun raised, 2 bodyguards flanking. Sarah had seen him angry, had seen him dangerous. She'd never seen him like this. Lethal, absolute, a man who would burn the world for what was his. The guard grabbed Sarah, using her as a shield. Kim didn't hesitate. Single shot, precise. The man dropped before Sarah could scream. Kim was beside her in seconds, cutting her zip ties with a tactical knife, pulling off her blindfold. "Are you hurt?" His hands checked her for injuries, gentle despite the violence still echoing around them. "Marcus, they have Marcus." "Jin has him, he's safe." Kim pulled her against his chest. "You're safe now." But Sarah was shaking, unable to stop, the reality of what she'd just witnessed crashing over her. Kim had killed that man without hesitation. For her, because of her. The hospital deemed her physically fine. Minor dehydration, bruising from the zip ties, no permanent damage. Emotionally, Sarah was shattered. She sat in Kim's penthouse afterward, wrapped in blankets, unable to get warm. Kim stood by the window, his back to her. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "I love you too much to destroy you. This has to end." Sarah's head snapped up. "What?" "You were kidnapped because of me. You saw me kill someone. You're being followed by the FBI. This isn't a life, Sarah. It's a prison." He turned, and his eyes were devastated. "I won't be the reason you lose yourself." Anger burned through Sarah's shock. She stood, blanket falling away. "You think leaving me will make me safer? They already know I matter to you. The damage is done." "Then I'll eliminate every threat. Chen, the FBI, anyone who—" "Or we change the game entirely." Sarah crossed to him, grabbed his hand. "Use your resources to build a legitimate empire that actually helps people. Give them reason to respect you, not just fear you. Transform from the inside." Kim stared at her. "You're asking me to become someone else." "I'm asking you to become who you could be, who I see in you." His jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. "Come with me." The rooftop of Naraj was empty at sunset, the city spreading below them in shades of gold and shadow. Kim opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "I can't promise safety," he said quietly. "I can't promise easy, but I promise I will spend every day earning you, becoming the man you see when you look at me." Sarah's breath caught. "Kim!" "I had this made the night you refused to kneel." He met her eyes. "You barely knew me." "I knew enough." He took her hand. "I knew you were someone worth changing for, worth fighting for, worth becoming better for." Sarah looked at the ring, at this man who'd killed for her and was offering to transform for her. The choice wasn't safety or danger anymore. It was whether she believed in the possibility of redemption, whether love could reshape a person's destiny. "Yes," she whispered, "but we do this together. Real partnership. I'm not your princess. I'm your partner." Kim slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close, his forehead against hers. "Partners," he agreed, "in everything." The sun set over Manhattan, and 2 people who'd found each other in violence chose to build something in light.
6 months later, Kim Park was systematically dismantling everything he'd built and reconstructing it as something new. The gambling operations sold to associates with clear boundaries. Protection rackets transitioned to legitimate security firms.
Smuggling routes closed permanently. In their place, commercial real estate in emerging neighborhoods, a portfolio of restaurants that hired from local communities, tech investments in Korean startups, and a community development fund that bore Sarah's fingerprints on every initiative. The old guard hated it. Men who'd built empires on fear watched their world transform into something they didn't recognize. Sung, Kim's underboss for 8 years, was the loudest dissenter. Sarah had warned Kim, but loyalty was a hard thing to unlearn. The charity gala at the plaza was supposed to be a celebration, the launch of the Park Foundation's youth job training program. Sarah wore midnight blue silk, Kim's grandmother's jade pendant at her throat. Marcus was there, walking with a cane now, physical therapy paying dividends every day. Mrs. Park had even sent a gift from Seoul, a traditional Korean bojagi wrapping cloth, which wasn't approval but wasn't rejection either. Sarah saw Sung first, moving wrong, his jacket too heavy. She grabbed Kim's arm. Something's not right. Then the world exploded. Sung drew first, targeting Kim, but Chen's men were there too, using the chaos as cover. A 3-way firefight erupted in the plaza ballroom, Kim's loyal bodyguards returning fire, guests screaming, diving under tables. Sarah threw Marcus to the ground, covering him. A gun pressed into her hand, Min-jun, appearing from nowhere. "You remember what Kim taught you?" She did. Sarah had never wanted to shoot a person, but when one of Sung's men advanced on Marcus, weapon raised, she didn't hesitate. Sent her mass, just like Kim had drilled. The man dropped. Sarah's ears were ringing, her hands shaking. Then she heard Kim's grunt of pain. He'd stepped into a bullet meant for her, Sung's final shot before Min-jun put him down. Kim staggered, hand pressed to his shoulder, blood seeping through his white shirt. "No, no, no!" Sarah was beside him, her dress soaking crimson, her hands trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me. Kim, stay with me!" His eyes found hers. "I'm okay. You're okay?" "You took a bullet for me, you idiot!" "Always." His smile was pained but genuine. "Always, Sarah." Mrs. Park arrived at the hospital like a winter storm, elegant, furious, terrified. She found Sarah in the surgical waiting room, still covered in her son's blood, mascara streaked, refusing to change clothes or move until she knew he was safe. Their eyes met. Something shifted in Mrs. Park's expression. Not warmth, not yet, but recognition. She sat beside Sarah, silent for a long moment. Then, in careful English, "He never brought woman home before you. Now I see why." It wasn't full approval, but it was a truce. Kim's recovery took 3 weeks. In that time, he eliminated every remaining threat, not through violence, but through systematic dismantling of his enemies' power bases. Chen's organization crumbled under federal investigation, courtesy of Kim's information and FBI cooperation. Sung's factions scattered when their funding disappeared overnight. When Kim was strong enough, he called a meeting of all the family heads, Korean, Chinese, Italian, Russian. Every major player in New York's underworld gathered in a private room at Mirage. Kim stood, his arms still in a sling. "I'm transitioning my operations. Legitimate businesses, community investment, political influence through legal channels." He paused, letting that sink in. "Anyone who touches Sarah Thompson or Marcus Thompson answers to every family here. Not just me, all of us." He presented evidence of his new power, city council connections, development contracts, political campaign contributions, economic leverage that violence obsolete. The family saw the future he was building and recognized its value. Peace through strength and mutual benefit. It worked. The wedding was a fusion of worlds. Traditional Korean pabek ceremony in the morning, Black American celebration in the evening. Marcus walked Sarah down the aisle, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, tears streaming down both their faces. Mrs. Park sat in the front row, wearing hanbok and an expression that almost resembled approval. Kim's vows came in English first, then Korean. "You saw me when I was invisible to myself. You made me want to be better. 당신은 내 삶의 빛입니다. You are the light of my life." Sarah's voice broke on her own words.
You gave me more than safety. You gave me partnership, respect, and a future I didn't dare dream of. You saw me when the world refused to, and I choose you, every day, in every way." Minjun cried. Mrs. Park dabbed her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. Marcus grinned like his sister had just won the lottery. That night, in their honeymoon suite overlooking the city, Sarah and Kim lay tangled together, talking about futures neither had imagined possible. California, Kim suggested. Fresh start, away from old ghosts. Seoul for part of the year, Sarah countered. Your mother's softening. We should build that bridge. Children? His voice was tentative. Sarah turned to face him. In this life, with everything we've been through? Maybe especially because of everything we've been through. Kim traced her jawline. We survived. We transformed. We chose light over darkness. That's the story I want to give them. Sarah kissed him, soft and certain. Then yes, all of it. California and Seoul. Children and empire. Partnership in everything. Outside, the city they'd conquered together glittered with possibility.
2 years later, Sarah Park split her time between their Manhattan penthouse and a modern apartment in Seoul's Gangnam district. The dual life had become natural. Winter in Korea with Kim's mother, summers in New York with Marcus and her extended family. Kim's businesses were 70% legitimate now. A restaurant group that employed over 300 people, commercial real estate developments that revitalized neighborhoods, and venture capital investments in Korean tech startups that were changing industries. Sarah ran the Park Foundation with the same intensity she'd once brought to 3 jobs in survival. $50 million endowment, focusing on education access, healthcare in underserved communities, and small business loans for entrepreneurs who looked like her, people the traditional banking system ignored. Marcus had graduated from Columbia's physical therapy program and worked as the foundation's community outreach director. He walked without a cane now, though some nerve damage remained in his left leg. But he was independent, thriving, building his own life. Sarah was 6 months pregnant with their daughter. Kim had cried when they found out, actual tears that he didn't bother hiding. They decided to name her Amara, Grace in Igbo, Immortal in Korean, a bridge between worlds. Kim had transformed, though not completely. He still commanded respect that bordered on fear. He still had an edge that made politicians and business rivals careful in his presence. Violence was a last resort now, but the capacity for it remained, coiled beneath his tailored suits. Some darkness lingered, connections he maintained, decisions that lived in moral gray zones. But the trajectory was clear. He was building now, not destroying. Mrs. Park visited every other month, staying for weeks at a time. She taught Sarah Korean while they cooked together, traditional recipes passed down through generations. Sarah's cousins had integrated into their life, Sunday dinners that blended kimchi and collard greens. Marcus and Minjun had become unlikely best friends, bonding over basketball and an inexplicable shared obsession with vintage motorcycles. This was family, imperfect, complicated, chosen. The community center opened on a Saturday in October, in the Bronx neighborhood where Sarah had grown up. Kim cut the ribbon while local kids cheered, politicians smiled for cameras, and Sarah prepared to speak to the crowd of 300. She stood at the podium in an elegant burgundy dress, the color deliberate, always, and looked out at faces that reflected her own journey. Young mothers working multiple jobs, kids who deserved better schools, elderly residents who'd watched their neighborhood struggle and were desperate for hope. For a moment, Sarah was 26 again. Server's uniform, trembling hands, champagne soaking into marble floors, a man demanding she kneel. Then she blinked, and she was here, confident, powerful, building something that mattered. I stood in a restaurant 2 years ago, and someone tried to take my dignity, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the square. A man stepped forward and gave it back, not because I needed saving, but because he recognized that no one should have to fight for basic respect alone. Kim stood to the side, their daughter Amara sleeping against his shoulder, watching Sarah with quiet pride that made her heart full. We built this center because dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Because everyone deserves a chance to stand up. Because transformation is possible when people invest in each other, not just in profit margins. Sarah's voice strengthened. This is what an empire looks like when it's built on respect instead of fear. On purpose instead of power. On believing that everyone in this community deserves what I was given, a chance. The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah stepped down from the podium and walked to Kim. She took Amara gently, the baby stirring but not waking. Kim removed his suit jacket, burgundy, always burgundy, and draped it over Sarah's shoulders, just like he had that first night. Sarah looked up at him, smiling. Still trying to protect me? Always. His eyes were soft, full of everything they'd survived and built together. But now I know you don't need it. You never did. But I'll always accept it. Sarah shifted Amara to one arm, took Kim's hand with the other. Because that's what partnership means. Marcus joined them, then Minjun, then Mrs. Park, who'd been watching from the front row. They gathered together as photographers captured the moment, family in all its complicated, beautiful forms. Sarah looked at the community center, at the people streaming inside to see what hope looked like when it had brick and mortar and genuine investment behind it. She thought about the girl who'd refused to kneel, who'd carried the world on her shoulders alone, who'd been terrified to accept help. That girl had learned that dignity isn't given, it's claimed. That love isn't safe, it's worth every risk. That sometimes the most dangerous person becomes your safest place. They'd built an empire together, not through fear, but through respect. Not through power, but through purpose. And it all started the night she refused to kneel, and he decided she never should have been asked. Come on, Kim said softly, his arm around both his girls. Let's go home. Sarah looked at her family, chosen and blood, complicated and perfect, and smiled. They already were.